On March 19th, 2026, the world lost a true legend. Chuck Norris passed away at the age of 86, leaving behind decades of action films, martial arts influence, and of course, some of the most unstoppable internet jokes ever created. But today, I want to talk about something a little different. Something most people completely forgot existed. A video game. And it's not just any game, it's a 1980s Chuck Norris game that somehow actually happened. This is Chuck Norris Superkicks. Also, I grew up with Chuck Norris, watching movies. I even watched Walker, Texas Ranger, and I loved the Chuck Norris humor. My favorite one was when Chuck Norris goes swimming, Chuck Norris doesn't get wet, the water gets Chuck Norris. It's just so ridiculously funny. But if you want, you can put your favorite Chuck Norrisism in the comments, but I ask, please be respectful. Released in 1983 by this company, Chuck Norris Superkicks was part of a very weird era of gaming, when companies were just like, hey, what if we made a game about a real human being and hope for the best? Because we also had Pele Soccer. And yes, this game starred Chuck Norris himself. Not a character, not inspired by, it was Chuck Norris. It launched on platforms like the Atari 2600, Commodore 64, and ColecoVision. It even came on something called a double-ended cartridge, which should be an entire video all in itself. Because it literally meant you'd be playing a game and you're like, oh, I'm done with this game. You just take out the cartridge, flip it over, and it's a totally different game. Because nothing says next-gen gaming like physically rotating your game mid-session. So what do you actually do in Chuck Norris Superkicks? Well, you play as Chuck Norris, and you have 6 minutes to reach a monastery and rescue a very famous hostage. That's it. No pressure. 6 minutes. The game is split into two main parts. A top-down overworld where you walk along a path, and a fighting sequence where enemies jump you like it's a bad neighborhood in New York City in 1983. And here's the crazy part. If you step on the grass, you lose time faster. So Chuck Norris, the most dangerous man alive, was defeated by landscaping. When you get into fights, things get weirdly complex. You don't just mash buttons because, well, for one, it's Atari, so you had one button, but you have to use specific moves based on joystick direction. You have punch, kick, block, and then eventually you get the flip, jump, kick. You can do a flip, and if you mess up, you get knocked down. You get hit by throwing stars, and sometimes sent all the way back to the start. But here's something really cool. As you progress, you rank up through karate belts, eventually reaching black belt status. So technically, this might be one of the earliest RPG progression systems in a fighting game. Accidental innovation, maybe, perhaps, I don't know. Now, let's be honest, the game has a reputation. Some reviews called it uneven or even laughable. Others basically said, hey, it's not boring, but it's also not good. And yeah, this feels accurate. You could say this for almost any game back in the 80s. Except for like Galaga. Because Superkicks is one of those games where it's frustrating, it's clunky, the hitboxes aren't who knows where, and sometimes it just doesn't feel fair. But at the same time, there's something weirdly fascinating about it. It tried to mix exploration, combat, and progression in an era where most games were just go right, don't die. Now here's another strange twist. After a while, the game actually lost the Chuck Norris name because the license expired. So the game re-released under names like Kung Fu Superkicks and Super Kung Fu, which honestly is the most 80s thing ever. Imagine making a whole game about Chuck Norris and then being like, yeah, we can't afford Chuck Norris anymore. It's just Kung Fu now, with super in front of it. Chuck Norris Superkicks isn't a great game, but it's a fascinating piece of gaming history. It represents a time where licensing was experimental, game design was unpredictable, and somehow anything felt possible. And more importantly, it's a reminder of how far Chuck Norris's influence reached, from martial arts championships to Hollywood to even early video games. That's not something many people can say. Chuck Norris wasn't just a meme or an action star. He was a pioneer in martial arts. He sparred with Bruce Lee, and they were very close friends. He's also a pop culture icon, and clearly someone who even left a mark on gaming history. And while Superkicks might not be his greatest legacy, it's still a pretty unique one, because let's be honest, only Chuck Norris could lose to grass and still be remembered as unstoppable.